I wanted to bring this up, and we're going to have a great conversation about this.
Hmm.
The Calgary Flames, drafted 9th overall. With the history of the last few years, do you have any concerns or beliefs that you should be targeting Canadian kids?
No.
Why?
I don't think any of your college kids are Adam Fox risks because they'll be too good for college to play I got 4 years card.
So then you get your rookie contract or 5 or 6 years out of them, but really that's
you probably get your 5 to 7 years like you did Tkachuk, and then you're hopefully a winning team, and I don't worry about Americans staying in Calgary when the team's winning. I mean, we haven't really seen that. What we see is people want to leave when they're not good.
Well, but Gaudreau scored Game 7 overtime. They were winning. They lost Edmonton. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, that was also a time where we said that group can't win. They'll never win anything. It was the first time they got out of round 1 since 15. That's not, you want to build something better than the Gaudreau era, don't you?
I mean, you do.
Make the playoffs every other year.
So you don't think there's any thoughts to that at all? Because I would argue, I would say you're wrong.
It might be a tiebreaker, but so are you afraid of Russians staying in Russia? Are you afraid of Americans? Are you afraid of Swedes? What are you afraid of? Talk me through.
I'm mostly afraid of Americans.
Okay. So if Zeev Buium as defenseman at DU wins a national championship, 50 points as a freshman, you're worried that in 2031 or 2 he might want to leave?
Sure. I mean,
I think you'll be able to trade Zeev Buium and get a good return if he's a good player. And that it's probably
this is one of those things that you're not going to take with any credence. Like, you're just not going to.
Yeah, you can tell that it's
right. Like, you're just,
I'm an idiot for thinking it.
No, I think it's a good question to ask. It's just that, a lot of teams were scared of Russians for a long, long time, and it's proven not to be as big of an issue as people were afraid of. I mean, everyone was so worried about Matt Coronado being drafted. He's American. It's like, yeah, he signed immediately.
Yeah, but
the moment he was ready.
Doesn't mean he's going to stay here when you need him.
No, it doesn't. But if he's a good player, you can move him.
Did you think that Treliving's and Conroy's last couple of years were what you envision a NHL GM having to deal with? And
it's not a Calgary thing, but when you talk to agents, there are guys that just don't want to come to Canada. They're just
sure. And so did the Tkachuk deal kill this team? That's what I'll ask you.
Would you rather have Tkachuk, or would you rather have had to trade him?
You had Tkachuk, you had a top line in the NHL, and you had none of them now. None, Ryan. None. Yeah. You're downplaying all of this, and that it's.
Well, so letting Johnny in his final year not have a contract and walk to UFA, that's the mistake in my mind. Not getting a top pairing defenseman and a 115-point player for Florida. Like, the deal, I still don't think is a bad deal for Calgary. The extension.
You're not going to make that deal.
More of the issue.
You're not going into that summer talking to Florida about Tkachuk and going, hey, well, it's irrelevant. You don't want to trade Tkachuk. You're forced into it.
And I feel I don't want it to be a piling on here, but they knew Tkachuk was going to be leaving when they signed the deal prior, which is why it was structured for him to be a $9 million player in his final year and then going UFA, because he was going to get to UFA as quickly as possible and leave.
So you think if Gaudreau stays, Tkachuk's gone anyway?
I think Tkachuk, he was leaving. I do. I really do. And it's not a shot. Hey, he's not from here. He had no ties to Calgary. It was a team. He came, they paid him well. He played well, but he's an American guy, wants to play in America. And he's not the only one. There's a lot of them. Noah Hannafin was quietly that guy too, remember? Turned down $60 million.
No, the team's no good. I just don't think that's a good comp. Like, of course you don't want to stay for 8 years. They're starting to rebuild.
My answer, if you were to ask it to me, I think that it is a concern, but I don't know to what end
you can do anything.
Would you take a lesser player for a passport?
Where do you, especially with a higher
pick? Topic of conversation, and it's proved out. I wonder how much stock they put into it, and you can ignore it all you want, but
I'm not ignoring it. I just think it's minimal.
We're all talking about all these guys are trying to get to cities and states where the tax is no good. Well, not only are Americans wanting to go to those states, but they also don't want to come to Canada. So it's best city and state for taxes, number one, competitive, number two, and they get competitive because they get the players because they want to fucking stay there, right? Like, that's part of it. Vegas is the benefit of being Vegas is that you can keep those guys for cheaper. Tampa Bay, same thing. Like, we can't just say that it's nothing. So
it's
American
definitely
kids,
not nothing.
They see this, they want that first. Secondly, well, I'd rather be in the States no matter what, as opposed to Canada. Like, there is a trickle down to it. Like, and you know what? Green might be a great example.
Maybe
Coaches might not want to go to Ottawa.
Yeah, maybe. I'd love to see the salary on Green. Because it's like if you were like, we need a top flight coach, and then you're like paying him 2, it's like, that's not a top flight coach. But we'll see. I mean, I don't know. And look, like, I just have a tough time with people saying Americans don't want to play here. And it's like, I think the order you would have been isn't what you said. I think you would have competitive to win a cup, number 1, and then your money second in terms of taxes. Because you had it the opposite order. And when this team was competitive, they got a top of the market. Jacob Markstrom was not Canadian. They got a top of the market Chris Tanev, who's from Ontario, could have gone to the States, could have gone to better tax climates. They had a top of the market Blake Coleman, who just won 2 Stanley Cups and is an American and could have chosen to live in a tax
and paid him the most. All those guys got paid the most.
So my point is that if you're a place that can win, and they're not going to say no to you. So, like, okay, do you have to spend an extra $1 million on?
You have to build your winning window, okay?
Yes,
but they did that, and all those guys fucking left.
You've said it before. The Bennett Monahan careers exploding on them was a bigger part of that than I think we like to talk about. Like, who was their second line center when Johnny was here in round 2?
They won the first round. They got beaten by Edmonton. The projection was that they were trying to get better. You're passing it off as if these guys were shit.
No, they made it every other year, and they got to round 2 once. Those are the facts. Like, what was it? Johnny was 2015, his first full year. They make it that year. They win the conference once. They win the division once. They miss a few times.
So they were so shitty, guys wanted out of here, is your take?
No, my take is that they were a very middle of the pack team over the course of Johnny's tenure here.
They won the division. They win the division or the conference?
They won the conference.
They were middle of the pack team that won the division.
And they also missed the playoffs half the years.
The other thing is, too, when a lot of these agents are negotiating contracts, everybody wants a no move. And if they don't get a no move, then you get a modify. Then you 5-team, 10-team, 8-team, or whatever. And some of those times, players, if you got an 8-team, you can get to your 4 or 5 pretty quick. And then you fill up the list because you have 8 teams. And just sometimes Calgary gets put on that list. I just know from talking to GMs and AGMs in this town for a while, it was hard to get anything done on July 1 or before the deadline or in general, because just a lot of times either players had Calgary or Canada on their list. And whether they were, I am never going to Canada, or if it was just, well, pick 8 teams for your list. Okay, well, Columbus, Winnipeg, whatever, Calgary. They made it on the list a lot of times.
Yeah. And I would expect they'll be on a lot of lists until they're a contender again.
It's not the only thing, though.
I'm not saying
the COVID, the whole COVID thing in many ways, right?
Yeah. And look, JT Miller was going to leave Canada because of COVID. He's re-signed and is still there because we're through it. It doesn't mean everyone's changed, but the further away you get from COVID, the less you're worried about that situation again.
And the other thing, it's not a blanket thing. Some guys don't give a shit. They're happy to be in Canada. They're happy to play wherever. And some guys,
some guys love the city, right? Like, lots of guys retire here that didn't play here. There's a lot of pros about Calgary. It's not the sexiest market, but, like, I think Chris Tanev will have an appetite to come back here, even though this team's not great. I think there'll be conversations July 1 between Chris Tanev and the Flames if he's a free agent. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out more of our content right here on the Flames Nation YouTube page. We had a bunch of great long-form interviews. You can check out some videos we've done as well outside of the studio. And of course, if you want more writing or merchandise stuff, flamesnation.ca or nationgear.ca. Appreciate you watching.